Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Welcome back to another episode of Next to Madison. I'm your host, Madison Malloy, and on today's episode, I am sitting down with Allison Hare, who is a performance coach and podcast host of the Late Learner podcast. This woman is absolutely amazing. She shares her story of working so hard in corporate America and becoming so successful and doing everything she thought she should be doing, and experienced burnout and decided to reinvent her life to figure out what fuels her. And she is sharing not only her story, but advice on how you can get yourself unstuck, find out what fuels you, and how you can really release what doesn't serve you anymore and almost reinvent yourself. And so this is a great episode that's inspiring. And if you're feeling just stuck or just something that kind of you just need to lift up, or I don't know what I should be doing or what I want to be doing is the key question, then this episode is absolutely for you. So we will be right back with our guest on this episode of Next to Madison. Don't forget to please rate, subscribe, share with your friends, leave us a rating, all that good stuff so we can keep bringing you amazing guests and amazing content to make you happier, healthier, and wealthier. We'll be right back after this brief message.
Hey, it's Madison Malloy. Just wanted to remind you to make sure you grab a copy of my book, Time to Lighten the Fuck Up. It is a great, funny self-help book that is going to help you get out of your own way. I have already helped thousands and thousands of people, and they are on their way to living their dream life, and I want every listener to be able to live their dream life as well. So grab a copy of the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or even the audiobook on Audible. Now back to the show.
Okay, we are back with our amazing guest. With us today, we have the unbelievable host of the Late Learner podcast, along with a high performance coach. We've got Allison Hare. How are you?
Madison, it is great to be here. I'm doing well. How about you?
I am good. I'm so excited that you're on this podcast. You've got a fabulous podcast yourself, so I appreciate you gracing us with your presence. So you have an interesting backstory. So before we go into all like the good moments where people can improve their lives, tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll try and sum it up as succinctly as I possibly can. But I grew up in a house where my mother was a stay-at-home mom of 6 kids. And my mother would beat it into my head and my sister's heads. Allison and sisters, never rely on a man to make money. Always make your own. And so she would say this over and over and over again, because I feel like she made different choices and kind of lived with the planet of regret. There were a lot of opportunities that she never pursued and did not want us to follow suit. And to me, that kind of was a signal of, I'm going to work my ass off. I don't know if I can curse on this, but
yes, you can.
It was a badge of honor to be a workaholic. My father was a workaholic. He traveled all around the world. And that seemed to be the ticket to love, to appreciation, to value, to being worthy, was work as hard as you can, earn money, have freedom. And money was freedom. And when I went to college, it became really obvious that what I wanted to do was radio. That was all I wanted to do. I found a radio station, my life changed. It was like all the lights in my body flipped on at the same time. But my mother's tape kind of ran in the background of my head. Never rely on a man to make money, always make your own. And as I started to pursue the radio career, there wasn't a ton of money in it. And so over the course of my career, I'm in my 40s. At every opportunity, I had all of these creative inklings, and I always picked the money. I always picked the safe, predictable. I wanted to make my parents proud. I wanted to make the world proud. I wanted to be validated by the world, honestly. And checked all the boxes, got the good job, got the house, got the husband. All of this I did really late. I'm a late learner and a late bloomer. So with everything, I always learn late, and had kids later and did all of this stuff. And while I was working in the corporate world, I spent almost 25 years in corporate technology sales. So really high profile, kind of high stakes, and high pressure, honestly, like pressure on me to perform at all costs. And I just got so burned out. And so 2 years ago, I left my corporate career on purpose with no plan on the account of profound burnout and thought, my goodness, there has to be a different way. And Madison, I feel like I know a little bit about your story. I imagine you can probably relate to this. I
Yeah.
feel like the pandemic, for better or worse, showed us a different way, different ways to live and work. And
Mhm.
so being forced to be at home, working from home, identifying maybe some other avenues of creativity or exploration or things that made us happy. I think that as the doors started to open back up, I feel like women like us that were high performing, high earners, whatever it is, kind of woke up and thought, wait a minute, I've done everything. I've checked all the boxes. I've painted by number, but I'm not happy. And I don't know what to do. And so I kind of went on this unconventional quest to figure out how do I live life without burnout. And it became abundantly clear that who I wanted to serve was high performing women that were trying to redesign their life in a way that didn't involve blowing up their lives, but
Yeah.
is there a way to do it? And I have learned that there absolutely is a way, and there are infinite possibilities. I just think that people get stuck in the overwhelm of where do I even start, and kind of unwinding the ego, right? Like around achieving all of these things. So that's kind of a
Yeah.
catching you up. And, 5 years ago,
Wow.
I started a podcast called Late Learner. And it is an award-winning podcast and a globally ranked podcast. It has always been my deepest love. And it's where I kind of share these new ideas that I find. I find these people and thought leaders and experts and doctors and attorneys and people that they're breaking some of the paradigms and norms, and they're
Yeah.
doing it in a way that helps us live life better, which is why I think you and I probably have a lot of overlap with,
Yeah.
the way that we can really, really serve people, especially women, and give them more of a platform that they aren't stuck. But sometimes you just need some help to figure out what direction do I move in.
So, well, let's get right into that then. Like
Let's
if
do it.
somebody's feeling stuck, what would be your advice? Like, I just don't know where to go next. I'm yeah, just feeling blah.
I actually feel like saying it out loud is probably the first step, because I think that people like us are people that pride ourselves on getting shit done, not asking for help. And
Yeah.
like being able to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed. I think I'm in over my skis. I think there may be a different way. I feel like people like us, it doesn't even occur to us to ask for help because we are the ones that are fixing. And so, what do you do in that moment? So I think one of them is acknowledging that I I I think that there may be another way. To me, I feel like we are not broken. I think that is a really big narrative that can come out of potentially the self-help space or personal development space that is putting a label and, kind of diagnosing and pathologizing, oh, you have an anxious attachment, or that must be from your broken
Right.
childhood. But I actually feel like we've just outgrown our container and we're trying to
Yeah.
figure out, what does it look like if we push on those cracks of the egg that we've, kind of been squished in. We start pushing on those cracks and we see the light, what's possible. So what I do with my clients and in general, my ethos is we start with the energy. Where do you get refueled? What looks like fuel and energy to you? Like, what are the things that you absolutely love to do? I think because we get so caught in our routine of here's what I need to do, and I'm going to show up at my kids' soccer games, and I'm going to crush the meetings at work, and I'm going to make dinner, and I'm going to do all of this stuff. But in the meantime, your life is kind of owed to everybody else because you have kind of showed up as that superwoman with the cape, right? And
Yeah.
so what does it look like? What is it that you want to do? And I would always ask yourself, like, what is it that truly lights you up? And I even have a list and a way that kind of like a thought jogger of ideas of ones that you can be like, wow, I love that. I haven't thought about I really love gardening, or I love bird watching, right? Like it
Yeah.
can be something very simple. It could even be, like lighting a candle or drinking a cup of tea instead of like slamming monsters, right? Like just
Yeah.
sipping. So identifying what lights you up. And so I work in like kind of a three-pronged way. And the
Okay.
first one is, let's find your fuel and energy, because if you are at zero, there is no change. Like, right,
Right.
you're in survival. So we need to get you a little bit of fuel and energy. So identifying what is it that lights you up and figuring out how can I incorporate little bits of this. So one is fuel and energy. That's like the recharge. Then once you have a little bit of juice, then you can figure out what is it that needs to be released. Because if you're in like stress alarm mode all the time, everything seems like it is at equal priority and all at very high priority. It's really hard to make decisions when you're in that completely stretched mode.
Yeah.
So what can you release, right? What can you release? How can you build margin? And once you have a little bit of room, then you look at redesigning, and that looks like creative experiments. And so if that feels like something that's hard for you, there are mentors and coaches out there like me and Madison that can help with those things too. And so sometimes it really, really helps to have somebody in your corner that's kind of helping you and helping you with accountability, but also helping you reflect back of like giving you permission to identify what it is that really does light you up. And I feel like when you kind of get into that burnout state, it's really hard to remember that, like, oh, wait, I really do love, I took that trampoline dance class or
Yeah.
trampoline exercise class, and that was so fun. And I never went back. Why didn't I go back? Right. So it's kind of like, it's kind of turning some of the lights back on of the things that really, really bring you the most joy.
So when people find out, okay, I follow these steps, right? Like I figure out what fuels me, what can I release, and then how to redesign
Yeah.
your life. And you have this list. Oh my gosh, I love this. I love this. A lot of these things on the list end up being hobbies, though. They can't
Right.
necessarily bring you the income. So some of these women, high performance women, are almost trapped in like golden handcuffs.
Yes. Yes.
So that's where it becomes hard. It's like, do you walk away? Do you find a way to be more balanced? Like let's go into that.
I think what you're asking is more the practical side of like, if I'm going to look at a career pivot, right?
Yeah.
How do I make a career pivot that gives me the time and the energy and the freedom financially, potentially? And in a lot of cases, part of it again is kind of brain dumping. What is it that you might want to do without judgment? Meaning, I can't tell you how many times felt really, really stuck in the corporate world. And I would take a dance class and I'd be like, well, I'm not going to quit and become a dance instructor, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not apples to apples, but it could be a piece of the puzzle. So I am a dance fitness instructor. I stumbled on a dance class when I was 45 years old. I have no background in dance at all. And it gave me so much joy that all I wanted to do, my brain just flipped on. And all I wanted to do was like, oh my God, I want to give this to other people. But that's not my main thing, right? Like, that's not my
Right.
main thing. So I think part of it is kind of prioritizing what are the potential careers and allowing your brain to just brain dump it out. And then having somebody in your corner help you kind of with this career transition of, again, that's part of the creative experiments of let's follow this down a path and see if, let's say, I'll just use dance fitness. Maybe it's not dance fitness of being an instructor and teaching once a week, but maybe you want to create a chain. Maybe you want to buy a franchise. Maybe there is some other opportunities that can allow you to incorporate those. But it involves kind of exploring and do creative exploration as to what could that be, and then working the numbers with it. And so I think
Yeah.
what's great about the time that we're in is that there are infinite possibilities that were simply not available when we were growing up. I don't know how old you
Oh,
are. I'm in
absolutely.
my 40s, but there just
Yeah,
weren't.
I
It
know.
was either you need to work for this company and get your 401k and get stock options. You know this from working on Wall Street, right?
Yeah.
Kind of get this traditional thing. Now you have infinite possibilities of what's available. And so part of it is like trying on those hats and kind of working through the numbers and narrowing down what's going to make the most sense. What I found through working through clients is that typically it's not like a one-to-one thing. It's a kind of a blend or like a patchwork of some of your desires and things that are going to help you, either replace the income, grow the income, whatever it is. But it may not look like a traditional, like, hey, I'm just going to build up this other
Yeah.
traditional thing and like step off this platform and, everything is easy. There is a little bit of a roller coaster, and you may have some more expertise in this area, but that's kind of what I see.
Yeah, it's always goes back to like the power of walking away. Like at what point do you walk away? Like if you're true, I feel like if you're truly, truly unhappy, like there's no amount of money that can save you at that point. Like you just sometimes have to step back, like you can't bring it with you. Like what are the things
Yeah.
you want to experience before you depart this planet? And like make a list of that. And usually like that's your passion or what fuels you as well. But I think people get so stuck in just the financial part of it, like what your mom was saying. And like, it's and you brought up something that really hit home with me in the beginning was like to validate yourself, make a lot of money, work hard, like you were validating yourself. And I had such a struggle with this for so long because it was like my validation was purely based on the number in my bank account. Now, when I was building my
Yeah.
business or a struggling artist, with that belief system, I consistently felt like I was worthless because I was struggling financially. So it was separating
Mm.
your validation and your self-worth from that number in your bank account. Like I feel like that was the most detrimental path I could have been on. And maybe a lot of people who feel stuck and are like, I hate this job, I don't know what to do. Like, is your validation and your value tied to that number? And also, if you're living above your means or at your means, stop, cut back. And there is something that said like the less you own and the less you have, the happier you actually are. And I always said like I'm such a like a modest, I guess you would say, not modest, but like just a minimalist. That's what it is.
Is
Um,
that right?
oh yeah, I could pick up and like move in a second. Yeah, I don't like to have a lot of stuff. I just don't. But I feel like I'm happier that way because like I'm always open to jump on an opportunity at any given time.
Mm.
And it's
Yeah.
like you can sleep better if there's more money like put away versus the stuff that like you own. So I would say like if you're feeling burnt out at your job, like figure out where you can cut your costs and start like investing more intelligently to get you there. But like don't validate yourself based on your bank account. But it's hard because it's like when do you walk away? I was lucky enough
Yeah.
where the economy was crashing around me and I hated Wall Street anyways, and I didn't want to be doing what I was contributing that crashed the economy in the first place. So I'm like, well, I guess this is amazing, right? Like if that hadn't happened, it's like, would I have walked away or been like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing? So I think it's what am I supposed to be doing versus what I want to do, right? Do you find that?
Totally. And that's
Yeah.
what I think that what I should do versus what do I want to do. And I can give you an example of this. And um, this happened when I was at the height of my burnout. And this was
Yeah.
so crystallized for me, where I would work out at 5 in the morning. I'd work out from 5 till 5:30 in the morning. And after that, everything was owed to somebody else. And so I worked with a trainer, and then I would be, you know, getting the kids to school, going to work. I would get them
Yeah.
to their activities. In between there, I was doing my podcast stuff. And, I would like just crash at 9 o'clock. We do the same thing over and over and over again. And my trainer was gone for a week. He went on vacation. It was around the holidays. And I remember looking on ClassPass,
Yeah.
and saying, well, I guess while he's gone, let me take a hit class or weightlifting something or other. And I was like, wait a minute, what do I want to do? Like I had
Hmm.
never answered that. It was almost like, what should I do? And that's when I was like, I want to go to a dance class. So I found some random dance class, and when I took it, I felt like I was struck by lightning.
Oh
And it
my
wasn't that I automatically picked up the moves. I'm not really a great dancer even now, 4 years later. But when I stumbled on it, I felt this intense rush. And I remember asking myself, am I allowed to feel this good? Which is such a messed up question to ask. I
Whoa.
just was so used to feeling so bad and
Ugh.
restricted. So it became really clear. Like, I know I mentioned the dance fitness stuff only because it is the catalyst that allowed me to leave, not because I wanted to pursue that totally, but because it was like a taste that I was not giving myself permission or didn't realize that I could explore something different. And that became the door opener of like, what is it that I want to do, not what I should do. And I think when you start to kind of push on
Yeah.
those cracks, it really makes a huge difference. And back to your point about living beneath your means or, kind of cutting back, what I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the currency that people desperately want is peace and time
Yes.
more than money. And what I've found is that more and more people where, that hustle culture is get the Tesla, get the Lambo, get the gold watch,
Yes.
get all of those things where, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's, what floats your boat, great. But if you're leveraged out the butt, to pay for all of those things, to show it for what, but you're, what is it? House poor, I forget what it is, but cash poor,
Yeah, right.
house rich.
House, right. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
exactly.
But what I've found is that more and more people are kind of reevaluating the measure of what they need and what they want. And what it is if I could have money to pay my bills and to travel and do the things that I love, I don't need the excess. I don't need I don't want to say obscene because I genuinely believe in abundance, right? Money is a
100%.
tool that can
Oh
give
yeah.
more, but like chasing that for the scarcity of like, oh my God, if I don't have this, I'm going to fall apart. But like, what does it look like where I feel like people are genuinely investing in experiences and creating moments, and it doesn't have to be leveraging everything out. I don't know if you're seeing that,
Exactly.
but that's what I'm seeing is
Oh
that
yeah.
people are really taking stock and reevaluating and redefining what success looks like to them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you said it too. It's like if you're consistently hoarding money out of scarcity, you'll never have enough. You just won't because it's just the way the universal law works versus like
Yeah.
there's plenty of money, you'll have more than you'll ever need. And so, yeah. And it's like when you buy those stuff, I always tell people like if you want to buy a Lamborghini because it fuels you, makes you happy, then do it. That's the car you have to have. But if you're doing it to show dick down the street that you made it, well then there's a scarcity and a lack of self-worth that's attached to that. And it's just a negative energy
Yeah.
and that's going to go down a very dark path, you know?
Yeah.
So I had a guy that once told me, a very successful man, he said, I will not let anyone work for me or I won't partner with anyone who is extremely materialistic.
Hmm.
And I said, why is that? And he said, because when you're like building businesses and growing, if they're that materialistic and everything's tied to their what they have, they'll statistically they'll end up making poor decisions when stuff hits the fan.
Hmm.
And they'll do things that are unethical that could get me in trouble. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought about that. Like they wouldn't be
Hmm.
able to roll with the tide. We're not talking employees. Employees, it's different. That's not a risk. It's not as much
Yeah.
of a risk. This is like big money entrepreneurs shit that if shit hits the fan, are you going to be operating out of integrity? Or are you going to start
Hmm.
operating out of greed? Because a lot of these people that do these white collar crimes, they start off very good and they get sucked into something, and all of a sudden their validation and the need to prove something is so tied around materialistic items that they start to make decisions that are outside of who they actually are.
Hmm.
I thought that was like such an interesting thing.
I feel like there was a time in my life where the materialistic acquisitions were really everything. and
Of course, when
I
you're
grew,
younger, absolutely. I remember did it be like, oh,
yeah,
I can't wait to make it, and everyone can go fuck themselves. I mean,
right.
that was like a driving force. Like, I'll fucking prove it.
Yeah.
Now it's like, and nobody will know when I make it. Nobody, because I won't.
Yeah.
I'd rather be
I
safe
remember,
than hundreds of
yeah,
millions.
yeah, my father and my mom and my dad, when they divorced when I was a teenager, my father had several businesses and they kind of tanked. And so when my parents divorced, we essentially lost our house. My father left the country. There was a lot of scarcity, right? Like, so all the things my mom was so deeply scared of, her daughter is kind of relying on husband who ended up, leaving. And I kind of used that as like, I got into, it was in my 20s and it was an MLM, company. And I was a top performer of Mary Kay Cosmetics as a recruiter. And
Yeah.
that was the first time I ever made six figures. And I bought a house and bought the car and got all into the trappings. And, I don't know if it's still that way, but back then it was, you have to dress the part. You want people to look at you and
Worse.
go, I want that. And so I really did get caught into it. And I remember going across stage. So they have like this big pageantry of the awards stuff. And I had this like, I don't know, $2,000 dress on and all this stuff. And I was literally winning diamonds. And I remember feeling so empty. I remember feeling so
Really?
empty. Yes. And it felt like this doesn't feel like I loved why I got into, and certainly that stuff was attractive to me. I was in my 20s and I left a corporate job. I worked in radio sales and
Yeah.
was making more money part-time with Mary Kay than I was full-time at the radio station. And I felt like, oh my God, I can do this. I can help people. And I was helping leaders, in MLM. I've got my own, opinions on MLMs as it stands today. But back then, it really was a big thing to kind of get all these flashy things. It was like proving to my mom, I'm going to be okay. I can do this
Of
myself.
course. Right.
And,
Yeah.
but I ended up like $45,000 in debt. I had to sell my house, sell my car, sell the dresses, sell everything, and was like living in a basement in a townhouse somewhere in Atlanta with a woman who hated me. I mean, who would hate me?
Oh,
But anyway,
right.
it was so humbling. And I remember kind of untangling all of the things that I was going for, all of that image. And, of course, your leaders have these beautiful mansions and that's what you're aspiring to. And it was just so freaking empty because what I really felt was I felt like in the beginning, I was genuinely looking to help people in a leadership role and help them become leaders. And it became where I was so upside down and had so much debt that I was just looking to chase that. And it really, really, and I got out of debt and, kind of did all of that long after I left. But it just was an incredible experience of like unwinding,
Yeah.
how empty it feels to have all this stuff. And for me, it was like trying to prove that I could do this on my own, that I was always going to be okay. But everything was like this, with financial, it was just up and down.
But don't you feel like that was probably a blessing in disguise, as they call it, right? Like, I feel like when you're humbled at a younger age, it just helps you become stronger and more mentally stable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm
That
humbled
happened to me.
constantly.
Yeah.
I'm humbled
Oh,
constantly.
as an
That's why I'm a late
entrepreneur, we
bloomer,
always
right?
are.
Like we're always getting it wrong and then trying to heal. And I think what's cool about it is that you're never healed, you're always healing. And part of that is unlearning maybe some of the things that software that needs to be updated, if you're going to use a metaphor, and figuring out what is a newer system that's just going to work better, that's going to be more aligned, that's going to help you move faster. And
Yeah.
part of that looks like having the right people in your circle and updating what that looks like. And some of those people might be the people in your family or your partner in life. It could be a lot of different
Yeah.
things, and making sure that you have the proper village. So I do keynotes around rebuilding your inner circle, specifically after the pandemic, because I feel like a lot has changed. A lot of people have changed, and kind of figuring out where you fit in the world, but making sure that you've got the right people that are going to help you move forward, that you equally want to
Yeah.
help them move forward. It's not like keeping you in a lower state of consciousness, can only help you grow. So there's so much to that.
Oh, absolutely. Like who you surround yourself with is so key. Yeah, and I feel like when, obviously when we're younger, we're stuck with people because we go to school with them or we have some,
Yeah, by
we live in the same
proximity.
area. Right. And then when you get older, you're like, okay, I can actually like make these choices and make sure that they're good for you. But yeah, sometimes it is, and I still struggle with it. It's like, who do you keep around? How do you make more friends as an adult and trust
Yeah.
people? And it's weird being an adult because it's kind of like I'm an extremely social person, as you seem as well. But I really get to know people before I bring them in because I feel energy. And if I feel something's off, I don't really engage too much.
Yeah. I think also that there is a little more of a radar, that people are
Yeah.
a little less tolerant of some of the BS or even small talk that just feels, like some networking events are just exhausting and they're draining, and there are new
Yes.
ways to do it. There are
Yeah.
new ways to do it that are so much more life-giving and don't feel like you are just zapped. And I'm an extrovert, but I'll go to some of these events and all I want to, like, I'm just counting down the minutes until I can get home and crawl into bed and not do this anymore, because it feels so, I don't know if fake is the word, but it feels like there's so much pressure to be able to give an elevator pitch that's instantly understandable, that you can have somebody clearly understand what it is that you do, what you offer, and vice versa, of just that
Yeah.
constant face where there are just new and better ways to connect with people and engage with people online and offline,
Yeah.
in person and online, that I think there are a lot of systems that need to be updated.
Yeah. Oh,
And now there are
absolutely.
ways to
No.
do it.
Exactly. Absolutely. So, okay. So before we wrap up, tell people where they can find your podcast, find out more about your coaching services, all that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madison. So my podcast is Late Learner, so you can find it on any platform. My website is AllisonHare.com, two L's and an I, and Instagram, Allison__Hare, or you can find me on LinkedIn. But I'm active on socials. The podcast is always hopping with really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I've interviewed some really amazing people, and Madison's going to be on the show soon,
I
which I'm very,
can't
very
wait.
excited about. Yes. But I've interviewed people like Seth Godin and Mariel Hemingway and Jesse Itzler, and just incredible thought leaders. And I'm very thrilled that you get to be added to that esteemed roster of having really meaningful conversations that can change lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for doing the show and for doing what you do and being such a great role model to so many women who, because we have it harder than men. We just do. We
We
just
do.
we just do, no matter what. Not to mention the hair and the makeup and all that. That's just the beginning.
That's a whole nother episode. My
That's
goodness.
a
Yeah.
whole, oh my gosh, that's a whole segment, right? That's a whole series
Yes,
right there, right there.
it
All right.
sure
Well,
is.
thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's
My
listening.
pleasure.
Of course.
Madison, you're a
And
joy.
yes, you likewise. And thanks to everyone who's listening. We'll see you next time to find out who's next.
Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms, and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.